Welcome to the June 17th, 2024 meeting of the Yarmouth Board of Health. Please note this is a hybrid participation meeting where someone can come and sit here and be part of us here or remotely via Zoom, and there are plenty of instructions on the town website of how to accomplish that. As for attendance, let's start there. Eric, are you present? Eric's zooming in, I think. Eric? Maybe unmute. I can't.
Yep, present.
Welcome. Okay, here we are. Okay. Charlie, present?
Present.
Okay. Larry?
Present.
Mary?
Present.
I'm Hillard, and obviously present as well. Okay. Let's start the agenda. Public comment. If there's anyone out there or wherever they're zooming in, has any issues you'd like to address the board with? Anybody? Any hands up? Anything? Anybody? Nope. I don't think so. Okay. Let's go to number 2. This is the hoarding task force. Apparently there's an Eric Woods who might be here, who's the Deputy Director of Health and Environment in Barnstable County. And it looks like
That would be me.
that'd be you. Okay, just for the record, so people can hear you, introduce yourself. That's all.
Absolutely. For the record, my name is Erica Woods. I am the chair of what is now known as the Cape Cod Hoarding Resource Network, and I am the deputy director, soon to be interim director of the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment.
It's a lot to put
That's
together.
a lot to put together. I did pretty well though, didn't I?
Practice coming in.
I did. That's my whole ride here.
I see you reading anything. Okay, it's all yours.
All right. So, as I mentioned, we used to be, called the Cape Cod Hoarding Task Force. But our main purpose is education, collaboration, and support. And we thought it was more appropriate to, change our name to the Resource Network. As task force kind of sounds like you're going to go in and you're going to clean everything up and you're just going to take care of it all. And unfortunately, that's not what we can do. So, and just to give you a little bit of background, the reason why I got involved with the Hoarding Task Force, I was the assistant health agent for the town of Orleans. And I got involved in 2011, which was about a year after it started. And basically, we had those cases where, a neighbor called to complain about somebody, or, the Council on Aging came across an individual, and the only tool that we have in our toolbox as a health agent is to issue an order that says clean it up. And really, if these individuals were able to do that, they would. So there was a presentation by Christiana Bradiotis and Jesse Edselvetter at the college in 2010, and they were encouraging task forces because they realized that responding to individuals struggling with hoarding disorder was very seldom successful from just one entity, no matter who that was. And what they really wanted to try to promote was collaboration between organizations, individuals, departments, et cetera. And that's how the group got started. One thing I want to kind of step aside a little bit, just so that, we could talk a little bit about hoarding disorder, the definition of it, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there on what hoarding disorder really is. And I'm going to read to you from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, number 5, came out in 2013. Prior to this, hoarding disorder was classified under obsessive compulsive disorder. But as of 2013, it has its own diagnosis, and it is the persistent difficulty discarding or parting with possessions regardless of their actual value. This difficulty is due to the perceived need to save the items and to the distress associated with discarding them. The difficulty discarding possessions results in the accumulation of these items so that they congest and clutter the living spaces so that they are no longer able to be used as intended. And it creates severe distress to the individual or possibly other individuals in the unit. So one of the first things is, again, the persistent difficulty discarding. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be active collecting involved. There's often situations where individuals, inherit items from their parents when they pass away, and then, the aunt, they inherit those items. And they have such a deep connection to these items that they can't part with them. So they just keep building and building and building over the years. Obviously, we've heard about those cases where individuals do actively collect. It all started with QVC, and now Amazon just makes it so much easier to be able to do that. It could be the need to stop at every yard sale that you drive by on your way. But again, it doesn't necessarily have to include active acquiring. Another specifier is insight. It actually has been shown that many people have an insight that they do understand that they're struggling with something, but they continue to anyway, whether that's because they can't find the right help. And I will tell you right now, it's very hard to find help for individuals struggling with hoarding disorder. Or it might be a matter of, maybe they don't have any insight. Again, they're climbing in through their bedroom window because it's the only way they can access their home, but they just don't see it as being an issue. They're able to do it. It's the way they live, and it's just, not otherwise, it's not a problem according to them. So, again, the big thing, the key points on this is it's the inability to discard items, and it could be very simply a piece of paper. It could be a broken teacup that, I remember having tea parties with my grandmother, and this teacup, I know the handle's broken, but if I throw it away, I'm throwing her away along with it. There's that identification, or maybe it's the most beautiful teacup in the world and I just can't part with it because I'll miss it too much. And, again, when we think about these individual items, we have to remember that this is somebody's possession. I went to a training once and I thought this was quite interesting way to describe it. And they basically said, okay, trade wallets or purses with the person sitting next to you. And, without doing it, I'm going to tell you what we want you to do, but don't do anything. And, so, when I tell you to take out 3 items from that wallet, and you're going to throw it in the trash. And everybody, of course, grabbed their items back again. And if you think about it, going into somebody's home and trying to make those decisions for them, that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get no way, shut the door, see you later, goodbye. I kind of went a little sideways on that one because I do also want to mention squalor. Squalor is often confused with hoarding, but they are 2 separate things. Squalor is more of a self-neglect, an apathy. It's not somebody actively saving and holding on and not able to discard or part with the items. It is just the items continue to collect. They don't notice them. It doesn't even register that they're there. Likely if somebody came in and cleaned those items away, they wouldn't even notice for the most part. There are cases when hoarding will flip over, kind of cross that line into squalor. For instance, an individual who gets Meals on Wheels, and they're so, just thankful that they're getting these Meals on Wheels that it would be wasteful to throw away any leftover food. And, maybe they can't eat everything, so it keeps stacking in the refrigerator and the new ones come in and it keeps getting stacked. That starts to get moldy, then it spills over onto the counter and it continues from there. And then you have vermin and filth, and that's when it tips over into squalor. So you've started with hoarding, where that individual is actively saving and holding on to those items. And because of that, it has gone to a point where, again, the food is rotting, you might have pests, filth, etc. So again, a lot of people use those terms interchangeably, and they're not really interchangeable. Hoarding itself it actually starts at a young age, generally in the teenage years. You don't necessarily notice it. The parents will clean up the bedroom or, tell you to clean things off the floor. So that kind of keeps it in check. And then you go to college and you have roommates and they keep it in check. And usually it's kind of hanging out in the background a little bit until maybe there's some sort of a traumatic event where it really comes to the forefront. The estimates are anywhere between 3 and 6% of the population struggle with hoarding disorder. Part of the reason for that big difference is because people don't want to self-identify because it's very shameful. There's a lot of shame associated with it. Again, people look at individuals struggling with hoarding as, slobs, lazy, they're just filthy, when it really is a disability. It's a disorder that these individuals struggle with. One of the things that again, as health agents and just individuals who care about people, it's hard to help individuals with struggling disorder. It's not an easy process. There's a lot of factors associated with it. Again, there's a wide range of insight, from, yes, I know I have a problem, but I can't find help for it, to I don't have a problem, I don't need any help, and anywhere in between. It's a mental health diagnosis, but there is some evidence that, again, depending on the severity, depending on what other co-occurring illnesses are going on, there are success stories when individual is paired up with a coach or a self-help group. There are others that have such severe depression and anxiety that you have to address that first and then, go back to the hoarding. This is something that I could talk for hours and hours on. That's kind of a real quick overview of what hoarding is. As a resource network, again, we started in 2010, and we met on a regular basis. Some years it was monthly, some years it was quarterly. We would have an educational presentation, and we would invite all, people from every service industry, et cetera. So we had, attending the meeting, we had police, fire, mental health consultants, councils on aging, elder services, health agents. We had organizational companies. We did have some of the larger, shall we say, clean out companies, with the understanding that we don't endorse clean outs, but they have a place in certain situations where, in order to address a situation from a harm reduction approach, we might be able to need to access them to get that initial kind of cleaning so that the sources of disease and filth are put aside, and then we can go and address that hoarding piece. And just to say, so clean outs are generally 100% recidivism rate. It generally will send an individual into a deep depression. There's been stories of individuals committing suicide after a clean out. And, it's hard enough to gain the trust of the individual to begin with. But if you go in there and just throw away whatever you feel they don't need anymore, or you feel is quote unquote junk, they're not going to open the door next time somebody comes knocking on it to help them. So it's one of those things where, again, we have all types of individuals that we can reach out to try to help the individuals. But the unfortunate thing is that there's a lot of gaps in that process. We're trying to figure out how to fill those gaps within the Hoarding Resource Network. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we stopped our meetings because we couldn't meet in person. And, we at the county were responding to COVID itself with the testing sites and vaccines, et cetera. So we've been slowly getting back towards it. And what we've been trying to focus on is any way we can actually get help out there. So what we've started doing is we have some staff that have been providing what we call Buried in Treasures self-help groups. Buried in Treasures is a book by 3 experts in hoarding. It is a self-help workbook, and it goes chapter by chapter. What is hoarding? Do I have hoarding? There's different quizzes and exercises in there to get at kind of the depth of the hoarding. And then it starts a step-by-step process of skill building and, challenging unhelpful beliefs that individual might have. So that's one of the things that we've gotten out there. We have a pilot program that ideally we would love to build out, where we've been able to provide coaching services through the Medical Reserve Corps volunteers. We've trained them to do an 8-week, not, do 3 weeks in a row and then spread it out from there, but it's a problem-solving coaching session. So, I know when I go to clean my basement, I go down there and I see all the stuff and I look at it and I'm like, I don't know where to start. And I turn around and walk upstairs and say, oh, I'll get back to it later. Well, if you think about somebody who's struggling with hoarding, they already have a hard time with trying to address these issues. So even just trying to figure out where to start is hard for them. So what these coaching, we call it safe space clutter coaching, and the coaches will go in and, look at the whole picture and talk to that individual, find out, are there some harm reduction items that we can address here? Is there a means of egress that maybe that should be the first thing we work on? Or maybe there's some paper next to the stove and, okay, let's look at this whole thing and then talk to the individual and find out what they want to accomplish. Geez, I haven't had my granddaughter over here because, my daughter won't let her come over. I'd really like to clean out an area where, she can come over. Okay, let's work on that. And that works as both motivation and it gives them a place to start. And again, this is, it's one of the really hard things about hoarding disorder is the fact that you do have to find a place for those items to go. You first have to make the decision of what to part with and then where that's going to go. So, there's a lot of expense that goes along with it, a lot of time associated with it, a lot of time consuming, again, with the coaching, and then a lot of cost that goes with that. So I'll stop right there. I think I kind of gave a really wide overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
The senior center in Yarmouth has a program for that. What is that one?
Yes, Linda Colby, actually, she started originally with one of the original Buried in Treasures groups. God, I'm going to say 8-10 years ago. What she found was that her clients, wanted something a little bit more ongoing, not just the 16 weeks. So she, from my understanding, has kind of modified it a little bit so that it's not just that 16-week program, but that it continues on and on, which is an excellent idea because again, after that 16 weeks, that you would hope that the individuals attending these groups have found some support and are able to continue it on, but it's even better if there is that built-in support.
So it's an ongoing, continuous kind of support group.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not clear to me yet. I mean, how the diagnosis would be made and who would make it. Not everyone has the disorder. It could be a sign of something else. Someone who has an obsessive compulsive disorder, just maybe the hoarding is a sign of it. You see people with dementia who have the problem. You see people who have traumatic brain injuries who are hoarding. You see people with brain tumors. So there are a lot of things that could end up producing a sign of hoarding. So we're in the process to make sure you're treating the right diagnosis.
That's an important question, and I'm glad you brought that up, because you're right. There are situations where you have the hoarding symptoms, but they're better explained by, as you mentioned, a brain injury, et cetera. What we do as the Hoarding Resource Network is we don't diagnose. We address the symptoms. And again, each case is different. It depends on so many factors. You know, ideally, what we try to do is encourage that individual to go talk to their primary care physician, you know, talk to a mental health consultant to address any other associated issues. Again, our part in this right now is education, collaboration, and support. So we provide trainings, we collaborate on cases so that, you know, again, if, you know, Jay has an issue, he's not quite sure, he could pick up the phone, and we'll kind of brainstorm and try to figure out the best ways to address it. And we don't necessarily go on a diagnosis of hoarding disorder. We look at the symptoms and kind of what's going on, and use our tools as best we can to figure out if we can offer assistance and put together some sort of a cohesive response.
How do you handle the neighbors who may be reporting the issue and the quality of their life is affected by their neighbors' behavior?
That's hard. And again, that also depends on whether it's, you know, single family home with hoarding spilling out in the yard, or if there's a common wall. It really comes down to, again, as a resource network, we're there to help. And whether it's the health department that calls us, the VNA that calls us, and our role is to help the individual. And then, you know, we'll certainly talk to the neighbor, try to explain to them, you know, that this is not, you know, just somebody who's being lazy. But of course, we also want to respect that person's privacy. So, you know, again, we generally just deal with the individual or the service providers or regulators that are dealing with the individual.
Have you got any help from legal services? I mean, these are people who, it may be unsafe, but it's their home, they're renting, they own it. Has any from legal services helped you out at your meetings?
Actually, it's generally the other way around. It's usually us helping out legal services.
Okay.
You know, there's been cases where individuals are about to be evicted, and you know, we can help to say, okay, let's see if we can piece together some services for the individual. We had a situation where an individual had elder services in the home, and they had legal services was involved because they were about to be evicted, and we were able to coordinate a plan so that the housing authority said, okay, you know, if you set up a plan and they reach certain targets, then we will not continue with the eviction process. And so far it's going well.
That's great.
You know, I think legal services absolutely can be helpful in some instances. And again, this is why I really would, you know, right now we're still struggling to kind of piece it together, but I really want to get the meetings back up and running again, because I think it's a really good way to collaborate, find out what's going on across the region, find out where our resources are that we may have, you know, kind of dropped off through COVID, and just kind of, again, start that conversation again and see if we can figure out some ways to truly help these individuals, actually get some services and maybe some ongoing coaching or things like that, or even just funding for, you know, tipping fees. You know, we had a case where the individual couldn't afford a transfer station sticker. So we called up the town hall and said, look, is there anything you can help us with on this? And they said, well, can she pay $10 every other week? And she said, yes. Okay, here we go. So.
Great.
Have there not been any best practices published by now since this disorder's been around?
There are, yes. Again, what it comes down to is that health insurance doesn't reach far enough into it to provide those. Again, it's the generally cognitive behavioral therapy is shown as, being the most successful in these cases. And ideally, having somebody with regular coaching services works very well. There was a program with Metropolitan Boston Housing Partnership where, one of their inspectors realized that he was kind of doing the same thing. He would do the inspection and note it on the form, you need to clean it up, and realized that nobody was cleaning it up. So he took it upon himself to start working with these individuals, setting goals. If they, help them get connected with a primary care physician, mental health assistance, whatever they needed. If there was a physical limitation, maybe somebody comes pick up the trash for them on a regular basis, but he would work with them on a regular basis, coaching them, and, was able to pay for it through the Metropolitan Boston Housing Partnership. We have a significant missing piece in the middle there that we're just not quite sure how to fund and how to continue moving forward with it.
How big a problem is it on the Cape?
Again, they say 3 to 6%. The 6% skews towards the older population, which of course we have on Cape Cod. Most people won't self-identify, but what I can say is it's in every town, multiple cases in every town that I am aware of. And that's just one person. So that's aware of, it's a problem.
Can you make suggestions or give examples of how the Board of Health can constructively support this issue?
I think most importantly is being aware that it is a disorder. It is not something that people are just choosing not to comply. Being understanding that it's not going to be fixed overnight. Often it takes months, maybe even years. If at all possible, obviously there are cases where condemnation is the only choice. Obviously we're concerned about the safety of the individual. And as you mentioned, neighbors, especially common wall neighbors, but if there's a way to address it with a harm reduction approach initially, and, try to guide that individual forward, that's the best way to do it. And again, ideally, we will be bringing back together the meetings for the Cape Cod Horning Resource Network. And I invite anybody to come join us at the meetings and try to help us figure out how to help these individuals.
Well, certainly let us know when the meetings are up and running. Okay?
Absolutely.
And we'll have somebody there.
Excellent. That sounds great. Okay.
Just, Erica, thank you, Erica. You give a very good explanation here. As you can hear, this is a deep and complex psychological issue, right? And it's as unique as each individual. But I have to tell you, we have in Yarmouth, we have seen them over the past several months, more and more cases. It is surfacing. They come from a variety of sources, where it could be the fire department, it might be a neighbor. It could be an estranged family member, someone long distance, but it is a concern to us. We asked Erica to come in because she does have the experience and the background to this. I want to bring this to the board that it is an issue in our community, like as Erica said, so many communities, but we need to start somewhere. There's no quick fix. She mentioned 2 words about building trust and collaboration. If we can even start looking in that direction, because I can tell you, we feel somewhat at a loss and frustrated in that we really don't have those, and we understand it is not solved by writing an order or issuing a fine in any way. This is a slow process to engage, to build trust and move towards a solution. So this is just the front end of but to start the conversation so that the board understands it, the community listening understands that this is in our community. It's not being, it's being addressed, it's being looked at, and we want to build some infrastructure that we can respond properly. So there's going to be more to come when the resource network gets up and going. If we can be part of that, that would be terrific. I think some of the human service grants that you'll be talking about later has some infrastructure as well. This is going to be a diverse and like I say, multi-pronged approach. Faith-based organizations, social workers, certainly municipalities play a role, neighbors and otherwise family members, but it's something that it's on the Cape. It's not just unique to the Cape, but it's prevalent on the Cape, and we need to start that community discussion. So the board is now aware, and we're going to follow up with Barnstable County's help and try to move in that direction. And I can't imagine it's just Yarmouth. There'll be others. I'm sure the other community agents, and we'll share information. And we'll share information and resources and try to get the help, because some of them that we saw most recently, individuals are putting their lives at risk, right? They're putting their lives at risk. Fire department is very concerned. Sometimes we get able to get in the door to simply say, we'd like to check your smoke detectors. And the fire department has been very helpful in that regard. Animals sometimes are involved, so animal control has been helpful. Everyone is compassionate and wants to do the right thing. But as Erica said very well, it's difficult to try to get to move in that. The pathology is such that it's a very complex issue, and the progress is slow.
Thank you for coming in. Good luck with your basement.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks for coming in.
We'll stay in touch.
Okay,
Maybe, Hillary,
yes.
maybe we could have Linda Colby come in and give us her perspective from working with this, primarily probably citizens of Yarmouth, but I'm sure not exclusively.
Right.
Just as another, not that you can beat what she did, but just as a more individualized.
Okay.
And again, Mary, we don't know. I bet Linda would probably, I don't know, Linda would know the scope of this far better than I.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have my arms around this in any way. I don't know how big this iceberg is. We've seen a couple cases.
Yeah.
I don't know what's underneath.
To just be another perspective on it.
Right.
Because she deals with the support group and
Be very familiar, but so that the board understands and the community does understand, this isn't clutter. This isn't just a Cape Cod garage where there's some things have stacked up. This is now life and safety issue where they're not able to even maybe navigate their home. We've gone into these homes, Barry and I, and we can't tell we're even in the kitchen. It is life and safety issues. Should there be an instance where the fire department or a wellness check has to be done, they couldn't even get in the home. But it starts with building trust. And that's the starting point. We're here to help. And that would be my hope, that we can start in that regard. But there'll be multiple partners in this. But that's a great suggestion. I can reach out in that.
Okay, number 3 here is the Massachusetts Paint Stewardship Bill. Carl, you're here tonight, to present that, and if we move down, we have you up for the Eversource vegetation control and the railroad right-of-way vegetation control. So we're gonna have you take off with 3, 7, and 8 on our agenda.
Okay, certainly.
Go to work.
Carl Lawson, hazardous materials inspector with the health department. The paint stewardship bill information before you, that's a Massachusetts House and Senate bill. And it started, my knowledge of it came about when I attended a paint forum put on by the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. And they run the hazardous materials collections across the Cape. They run about 24 a year throughout the county. And they sponsored the forum. The bill is supported by Mass Recycle, which is a nonprofit Massachusetts organization. Their board is made up of both private industry and public employees. And within that, they have a product stewardship committee. And the committee supports this bill, and it's intended to increase the recycling of paint, keeping it away from more of the public waste collections to save taxpayer money, and also to keep it out of the landfills. Ideally, the oil-based paint, which is flammable, ideally that goes to a dedicated hazardous waste collection. The latex paint is non-hazardous, which doesn't mean it's non-toxic. It just means it's not flammable, not reactive. So that can be dried out and put in municipal trash. But it would also be beneficial to municipalities to remove even the latex paint from the waste stream. So the stewardship bill applies to both oil and latex-based paints. And if it becomes law, it'll collect point of sale fees of $1.25 a gallon. They'll be managed by a nonprofit. Those funds will then be used to establish more free paint collection sites, so that the paint recycling can be more accessible in terms of location and times, because right now there's limited times, maybe 24 times a year when Barnstable County residents can dispose of oil-based paint, and it's always on a Saturday morning. So this will expand the availability. And there's 11 states that have passed the law. Some of them are neighboring states to Massachusetts, and those are New York, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Vermont, and Maine. 70% of the collection sites are voluntary retail locations. So the collection sites may piggyback onto existing municipal hazardous waste collections, maybe even at municipal transfer stations, but a lot of them will also likely be in retail stores and in the private sector. I took a look at the state of Maine because I wanted to learn a little bit about what's going on in a nearby state. And what I found in the state of Maine, they put out an annual report every year. So I took a look at the 2023 annual report, and I found that Maine identified 239 potential paint drop-off sites. And of those, 82 were participating. So there were 239 potential that they identified, 82 or 34%. So just about a third are participating. But so that gives you an idea as to what a neighboring state is doing. Cape Cod Cooperative Extension also, which I mentioned, operates the public waste collections. About half of the products collected right now, they said, are paint. So that's a lot of their load. And of course, the taxpayers are bearing that brunt. So what Mass Recycle is seeking through their product stewardship committee is they're seeking boards of health and municipalities to support this bill in one out of three ways. It could be signing an endorsement form, it could be submitting a letter of support, or the third one is passing a resolution. And I put sample documents of each in your Board of Health packets. And I also received an email, a directive email from Juanita Trabert, who is a product stewardship committee member, and she's also with the City of Newton Public Works Department. And she mentioned that the resolution, the third option, that's the longest road to complete. The endorsement form and the letter of support are the easier ways to support this bill. So it's before this board for consideration to determine whether or not that's something you as a board want to support, formally support.
I noticed on the list of people, organizations, towns that have supported, it doesn't show any boards of health.
I noticed that too. I didn't have I attended the forum, which was about an hour, and then I received this handout. I noticed that later. Yes.
I can see how it would relate to us, but I'm wondering if we are the best ones to endorse it, and it shouldn't come perhaps from the town, because that also would extend to, any land transfer station considerations and the business community, et cetera.
I see.
I don't know, that's just my thought. I don't mind endorsing it. I think it's a good idea, but I'm just wondering if it would be as good as having it come from, say, the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of
DPW.
that. But I
Perhaps
don't
we could
see-
explore that.
DPW.
Yeah.
Or we could do it as well as
Right.
another part of the government here.
Right.
But yeah, it's a good thought, Mary.
But yes, I'd be fine endorsing it as a Board of Health member.
Yeah, I certainly would too. Question about which action to take or what makes the most sense. Do you
I
think?
think the woman that spoke to you about the resolution is right on. It took forever to get that resolution out supporting the wastewater management treatment program, because it goes through so many layers,
Right.
so many editors. So I think And in that endorsement form is kind of funky, so I just do a letter of support. And recommend to the select board or the town administrator that they also support it. That would be my
Does
suggestion.
everyone see what that document is right now? This is, I put down action two before, so this is a example of a letter. Here, what you're looking at, near the endorsement. That's that. Keep going, yeah.
Second to last page.
After that, endorsement. So. No, it's not that, it's the map. Here, let's take a look at what we're talking about. You have Charlie, you have it?
No, I do now.
Okay, great.
Wait a
You
minute.
have it.
If there's one thing I may add, Calliope Shute, who is a hazardous materials specialist with the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. She's available by Zoom to answer additional questions the board may have. She's otherwise monitoring the meeting.
Oh, great. Hi there. You're welcome to say anything you'd like, if you'd like to contribute to the discussion here in any way.
Well, okay. Hello, can you hear me all right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's nice to be invited. Thank you, Carl, for summing up the paint stewardship bill. And I just wanted to note that the Barnstable County Commissioners have endorsed this bill, and they've endorsed it in the past, which allows Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, for whom I work, to educate boards like yourself on this resolution, but I am only offering information, not in any way endorsing policy change. I wanted to point out that the Cape Cod and Islands Health Agents Coalition has endorsed this bill, and as well as the Mass Municipal Association. So while boards of health may not be specifically listed, in the background, they are supporting select boards to endorse this bill. Sometimes on Cape Cod, health departments are the fiscal agents or the primary stakeholders for the household hazardous waste collection invoices, which have been escalating in costs over the last couple of years. And so they are health departments can be a primary stakeholder in this conversation. In Yarmouth, the DPW pays for the household hazardous waste collection invoices. So that's something to keep in mind. And to kind of hop around a little bit, Carl gave you a very comprehensive, succinct, overview of this bill, but I did want to note that one of the beneficial aspects to it is that small businesses and large businesses can participate in paint drop-off year-round, and that's to some degree part of the household hazardous waste collection events. We do offer small business waste disposal. That's sort of how I partner with Carl in a more boots on the ground way. And so, if you are a general contractor, you're a clean out company, you have a paint store and you want to get rid of your waste paint, generally you can only do that April through October, and you do have to pay. This bill would alleviate the inconvenience of April through October. You could dispose of your paint year round, and you would also not have to pay, whether you're a resident or a DPW or any municipal department that may have paint, but also businesses. And I think that's really important to point out. And then just to underscore the costs of household hazardous waste collection events, which is really at the heart of the matter when I look at sustainability of the program. Household hazardous waste collection events are escalating in costs for a number of different factors. And while Yarmouth doesn't pay a lot for paint as compared to other towns, you do pay $10,000+ a year to collect only oil-based paints at 2 events. Some towns have more than 2 of hazardous waste collection events. Yarmouth has 2, and you pay about $10,000 a year to dispose of paint only, oil-based paint only. And so to quantify it, this would allow residents of Yarmouth to drop off paint year round. They could drop off any kind of paint, excluding aerosols, and for no cost. And so there's a real great aspect. It's convenience and cost. And I'm around for questions, but I just wanted to make sure that that those factors were known.
Is this somehow modeled after the return of oil? I mean, has come up before when there've been issues for the transfer station accepting oil here, where, Eric, you've brought this up, where you can bring oil to a store. Am I correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, you were talking to Eric.
Oh, that's all right, Carl. I believe any retailer for engine oil, I believe, is required to accept the waste oil product as well.
So Eric is correct. There's and it's a good theory. I think if you try to bring your motor oil back to CVS, they would struggle to collect it. The nice thing about Paint Care, if you were to compare these programs, is the Architectural Coatings Association, which are the organizations, companies that make paint. They manage the nonprofit through a company called Paint Care. So all of the paint companies are really on board. The folks that make paint are really on board with collecting that paint back and reusing it, making it back into what it was originally manufactured to be used for. And they are the Paint Care, the nonprofit or arm of the American Coatings Association, the people that make paint, are the folks that are tasked with taking it back and creating the infrastructure for taking back the paint. So they're incentivized to create a very strong, vibrant network for taking back that paint because they recycle it and then they resell it.
Or were you about to say something or not before?
No, thank you. Eric covered it. Thank you.
Okay. So what action can we take tonight?
That would be
That's
if
an
you
open
want
question.
to,
How about we'll start with you for an answer.
okay.
What are our options to actually do if we're doing something tonight?
Would you like to take one of the 3 measures outlined to support the paint stewardship bill? And as Juanita Trabert pointed out, the first and second are probably going to be the easiest, shortest paths.
Mary, you mentioned the endorsement form has some complications to it. I agree
It has
with
some
you.
questions that aren't.
The endorsement form of the letter of support. The resolution, I understand, would be a longer
Right.
process.
I would go with the letter of support. There is a sample letter of support in our packet.
I agree with Mary. Larry, Charlie, what do you think?
I agree.
And I also think we should recommend to, I don't know, either directly to DPW or to the select board that they endorse it.
That sounds okay to you?
If I could just ask a question
Yeah.
for Calliope, are you back with us? Could you maybe just speak to Mary's observation that a local Board of Health isn't on the list of supporters on this?
Yes, so I think there's 3 bills in the House and Senate currently, sponsored by different different representatives or senators. There's a sense of urgency with this particular one because it's in the House Ways and Means. And so I think there's been some people like Juanita Trabert that have been trying to get select boards to sign on to it for quite a long time. And the Cape has been not as ahead of this as we could have been. So I think it may be that some of the other communities around Massachusetts have had the time to get it to before their select board, where now we're kind of limited, or not we, but the state is kind of limited. So we're trying to get we're trying to let everyone know that, you know, that this is an opportunity for them. And if they want to, they can sign it. And I believe the end of June is the cutoff point. So I don't know if it has to do with the timing of the select board agenda being posted, how often select boards meet. Could be any number of those factors. I don't know.
I think would it be more impactful coming from, certainly the board just wants to, seems to, they want to pick maybe the best avenue, but is it more impactful coming from the Board of Selectmen, which represents the whole community and maybe has some strength in that regard? Would that be more a stronger endorsement, or coupled with the Board of Health? Can you just guide us on that?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that, honestly. I've being a longtime member of a Board of Health in Mashpee and Provincetown, I feel like boards of health have a lot of weight, their opinions in their declarations, but I don't and I don't discount that. I do think select boards, obviously, you know, it's a little bit more representative. I don't know. I couldn't answer that. I don't know when your next select board meeting is and if the agenda has been filed. I think Carl would be more well aware of that. I haven't been appraised of that.
Thank you.
Well, our letter would go anyway.
With them, right.
Anyway, and then we would also let the select board know that we sent a letter and
Okay.
recommending it, and that we would request that they do the same. How about that? Whether or not they get it in time, it wouldn't hurt to have them on record supporting it if there are 3 bills.
And maybe the director of
Logistically,
DPW.
I mean, that sounds fine logistically of doing that.
I don't know their schedule, but I'll certainly we can
What we
work.
can do is give it to
We
them.
can, right,
Give it
all we
to
do is
them.
work with it.
Doesn't matter.
I can get this to the town administrator and also to Jeff Colby at DPW, because they're the ones directly, their department is directly impacted. Well, certainly the environment is our concern as well. And the boards, obviously, your purview. But Jeff and the recycling center becomes, they're directly in line with this. That operation will be directly affected up at the recycling center. So I could get this to Jeff and to the town administrator and ultimately to the selectmen.
But in any case, it will come from us right away.
With the voters there, yeah, yep,
Yeah, okay.
okay.
That sounds good.
And what about signing it? In other words, so it's,
Oh, you can sign it for us, or I'll come in and sign it too. I mean, whatever needs to be done.
The letter we can say by unanimous vote, and if, I don't want to presuppose a vote here, but by a vote and then signed by the chair. That would,
fine.
yeah, I think that
Sounds easy
it
way to
expedites the process.
Right.
Hillary, we could get your signature, we can bring it to you, or you can stop in, however.
Okay, so we probably need a motion then to, in support of the letter of support, whether we want to move forward with it or not. So,
I move that we send a letter of support for the Massachusetts Paint Stewardship Bill, and that we also recommend or communicate with the DPW, that the department staff communicate with DPW and the town manager, town administrator, and request that they also support the bill.
referring to both bills, right?
Right.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, well stated. Thank you. Any other discussion on it? Have a second for this. Okay, thank you. All in favor, just raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay.
Got it.
All right.
Yep.
I'm good with that, that's for sure. Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Now,
You, Clive.
Clive P., thank you.
thank you. You're welcome to stay on with any of these, but, okay. Carl, don't go too far away. We're up to Eversource Vegetation Control. Number 7 on your agenda. And that, some information was obviously in your packet.
Okay, so certainly many of you may have some familiarity with this topic because it's been discussed in the past at Board of Health meetings. So Eversource has again for 2024 submitted to the Mass Department of Agriculture their 2024 yearly operational plan for vegetation control. They've submitted that for approval as required by state regulation. And Mass Department of Agriculture, who reviews the plan, they're also the sole regulating authority of pesticide use in the state per Massachusetts general law. So the 2024 yearly operational plan from Eversource, it describes how vegetation will be managed on electric right-of-way 302 in Yarmouth. And electric right-of-way 302, that spans Yarmouth from the Barnstable line all the way west to the Dennis line, heading approximately east and west. And it's on the south side of Route 6. And I know other times we've discussed the right-of-way that's on the north side of Route 6, but just to give you an approximation of where in town this lies. And as in the past, this plan, it's an integrated pest management plan, which means they don't use just one method of control. They integrate mowing, mechanical cutting, and herbicide applications as needed. And the species are also targeted. So unlike many years ago when they sought to eliminate all vegetation in the right of way, they now seek to preserve the low growing species because the low growing species will crowd out to some extent the taller growing species. So over time, the more of a low growing plant community they can establish in the right of way, the better. It requires less maintenance as time goes on, less herbicide, less cutting, and so forth. So there's a lot of elements that have to be included in this plan, and those are all dictated in the state regulation. The state regulation is 333 CMR 11, rights of way management. And one part of that is there are designated sensitive areas, and there are two types of sensitive areas. There's limited spray and there's no spray areas. And these areas are delineated by the distance to wetlands, surface waters, and public and private water supply wells. So within those areas, so in the limited spray area, that's limited in terms of how much pesticide they can apply and how often. So for example, if they have to go back more often every year, they can't apply the pesticide every year in a limited spray area. In a no spray area, which is even closer to these wells and surface waters, they can't apply any pesticide at any time. So those have to be mechanically cut or mowed. And the goals of the YOP, the yearly operational plan, the reason they do this is to keep the vegetation a safe distance from power lines so it doesn't grow into it, maintain safe access for service crews, removing the tall growing, poisonous and invasive plant species, and promoting those low growing communities that I talked about. And the yearly operational plan doesn't apply to Yarmouth every year. This year, there is a 2024 plan, but they don't need to do this every year. It's on an as-needed basis. So that's why you might not hear about it some years. So it hasn't changed since the last Board of Health review in 2023. So I have submitted a comment letter because we had kind of a short review period. The deadline's coming up on the 21st. So I've already submitted that comment letter based on the Board of Health concerns in previous years. The one thing I did additionally was I asked for some clarification on their maps because the maps had a few colors, and I gave you each a copy. The colors don't reproduce that accurately, but there are a few colors which aren't included in the key, and I can see that they've delineated the proper areas. I'd just like some interpretations on what those different colors represent, if anything, or if it could all be one uniform color. So I'll see what kind of response we get on that, see what some revised maps may look like. So that's the background on that plan.
Any thoughts from anyone?
Yeah, Carl, is there any consideration to wildlife with these sprays?
I've read it, and I can't tell you exactly what it is. I know I've seen in past plans, and they also do. The yearly operational plan is a specific time, in this case 2024, in a very specific location. The vegetation management plan they do every 5 years, and that's a 5-year broader stroke plan where it outlines what all the different practices are. I know from, I'm not sure if it's in the plan, but in speaking with individuals at Mass DEP, Mass Department of Agriculture, I'm told that the herbicides, they become inert pretty quickly. So they don't stay poisonous a long time. And they also use drift card. They don't use drift cards every year, but the drift card is a tool by which they can tell how much the herbicide will drift under normal application conditions. And there's restrictions on wind speed as to when they can be applied. So that's what I know about that. The one other thing I can say about wildlife is I understand that some organizations like the low growing, they call it early successional landscape because it's beneficial to certain wildlife that doesn't necessarily do as well in a forest or in an open field.
Early.
I might be able to
yeah.
get you more information on that.
Oh,
from
well,
the-
they call it early successional, and that's typically where you'll get more wildlife because there's more food available.
I
But
see.
the other consideration would be birds nesting,
Mhm.
you know, that sort of thing, especially like, for example, turkeys nesting. The time of year would have a lot to do with when they.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that I can't answer. Yeah. I could see if I could find more
Well,
information, but
I
I can't
mean,
answer
this
that.
would be more consideration to wildlife if it was done. This is a very productive, you know, fertile time for wildlife. So certainly this time of year wouldn't be the best time to
Mhm.
apply those herbicides. You know, like late fall through winter, early spring would be, I think, safer for wildlife. Just my opinion.
Fact.
Wildlife, thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't recall timing in the past when spring.
I
took
do know for
place.
this year, the present operating period would be from the approval of this plan until October 18.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it would not be late fall and winter is
Right,
not planned
would-
this year, but
Yeah, so that obviously they're not really considering
Right.
that aspect of wildlife safety.
I see.
You know, it just because of the fact that their timing is inappropriate from that point of view.
I see.
Perhaps the next time the letter goes out, we can make that comment that Larry has made.
Sure, we could add that to comments. I could probably submit another comment letter now. I could check into that because we still have time in this period. We still have about a week
That's my opinion, but
Comments,
it
yeah.
might be other,
by the end
you
of
know,
this
the
week.
board might think
Yeah.
otherwise. I just not sure, so.
Just an additional thought to your point, Larry. I mean, when you're trying to control perennial vegetation, the most effective time to kill it with an herbicide would be in the late summer or fall when plants are translocating the materials they produce in the leaf, when they're translocating those sugars and things down into the root system. So just from a vegetation management standpoint, this isn't the best time to apply it as well. And, you know, to elaborate a little bit more on your question, I know that glyphosate or Roundup in particular is very harmful for aquatic life.
So any vernal pool might be affected by it. There's a lot of activity in these vernal pools that we shouldn't overlook.
There are setbacks to those surface waters, and I could read the regulation. I can't remember the measurement specifically. for
Just a
vernal
thought.
pools. Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed, you know, I feed a lot of birds and wildlife, and I noticed, you know, for a long time, we had a lot of hummingbirds. Now we don't see any. So, I mean, something happened obviously to those maybe they're insect eaters. And just my curiosity as to why we're not seeing the hummingbirds we used to see.
We're not seeing the flying insects that we used to
Yeah.
because of climate change.
Right. Is that what it is?
in terms of
My
like
thought was that,
the tree swallows, on all, we're not seeing as many. I
yeah,
had 2 this year and I hadn't any for a couple of years in
Yeah.
the past.
these insecticides have to be toxic to these birds as well, because they eat large quantities of these insects.
So perhaps you could add in the comment that Eric's making
Yes.
or direction or suggestion that he's made.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Very erudite, Eric.
So I could put both of those comments
Good.
in one comment
Right.
letter, one additional comment letter.
Thank you. That'd be
Tomorrow.
great.
People okay with that? I don't think we need a formal vote if everyone sort of
Sure.
agree. Yeah, I appreciate the effort, Carl. Thank you.
Okay, the wildlife concerns and the timing on the most
Right.
effective time to apply to vegetation, those two things. Okay, certainly.
Carl, anything else?
That's everything. Thank you.
Carl.
Everything? Yeah,
Thank you, Carl.
okay.
Thank you, Carl.
Certainly. You're welcome.
Appreciate it. It's helpful as usual. Okay, so back up to number 4. Okay, this is the tobacco regulations, specifically restriction on the sale of flavored tobacco. There's a letter there in our packet. I'm sure everyone read it, but maybe you can bring us up to date on it.
Sure, I just want to include this, it really, I know Yarmouth, quite frankly, I believe has a history with far as a flavored tobacco and some challenges that were done. This goes back, I'm not sure how long ago that was, but I know you were pioneers in this and actually took a strong position on flavored tobacco. This came through the State Department of Public Health, and I just wanted the board to be aware. It's better defining it, which is, it's difficult because distributors are defining it one way, and they're trying to sell the product and move the product onto the shelf. And retailers are caught in the middle. State DPH has a different regulation. So this defines exactly, as far as what constitutes a flavored tobacco. It has to be, first of all, tobacco product and produce characterizing flavors. And through that, it gives some kind of some parameters of distinguishable taste and aroma, packaging, public statements, right? Scientific articles, but then it lists on the back, the second page, the products that now are considered and determined to be by the State Department of Public Health using these parameters: Newport non-menthol green, Newport EXP non-menthol, Caramel Crush non-menthol Oasis, Caramel Crisp non-menthol Green Box, and Maverick non-menthol. It just, what we're going to be doing, Bob Collette has gotten this, Phil will have this as well when he's going out. It just gives it a clear definition of what, thank you, Mary, clarification as to what constitutes a flavored tobacco. It's very ambiguous. It is very difficult to say, well, it isn't, it doesn't say flavored on it. And it's a little kind of cat and mouse between distributors and the retailers. And quite frankly, the individuals that you permit are caught in the middle.
Yes.
And so it's difficult. So they all have, this is more education, at least it's very, it provides clarity.
And they all received this.
Yep.
Good.
All our retailers.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tobacco licenses.
Great.
I think we're now at 28, right? We lost one.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah,
Just wanted you to be aware.
yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. Number 5 there is the 2024 cyanobacteria monitoring. Sit here.
So the presentation that you heard at the last meeting that went up to the town administrator, he has signed that. So APCC will now be monitoring
Great.
and we'll be seeing that. It'll be showing up on their website, whether it's warnings or red flags. Just want you to know that the presentation that you heard, your endorsement was then brought up to the town administrator, and he has moved that forward and signed the contract.
Good.
Okay, number 6, everyone. This is for the 2025 Board of Health Human Service funding allocations. In your packet, you'll see the spreadsheet there that I created. So which I volunteered to do, whether it was the right thing to do or not, but this is what I came up with. And essentially, it's something to look at and consider as an option. I had to come up with something for us to look at and consider. Tonight, we come away with a totally different way of doing this, of dividing up the $60,000 that we have to work with in support of these organizations. So I added up the amount that people selected for each organization and worked some math and took 20% of it, of those amounts. As you see this in the second column, there 20% Board of Health proposed allocation. And I got a figure that was pretty close, you know, a little over 57,000. Just a couple of things to mention. That last column, Board of Health members allocating, if that's helpful tonight, when the board decides what they want to do, you can see the number of board members who selected to give money to that organization. You can see there were 4 organizations that everyone selected. There was, if you look over at the Yarmouth Food Pantry, there was, it came up to $4,500 over what was requested. I think there was one individual who thought more money would be appropriate than what was requested. And that's, I just want to make sure, which I mentioned in the last meeting, is make sure it's not skewed, that someone didn't say, well, I want to give $60,000 to this one organization. That would not help what we're trying to figure out here, I felt. And so that did not happen. There's just one example here, which I point out for the Yarmouth Food Pantry. Now, Larry, you weren't at the last meeting, and I had asked you ahead of time for your suggestions. So you didn't know the playing rules quite yet. And what you had given me was something like 48,000 out of the 60,000, and you had stated that you would go with whatever the other board members wanted to do.
Well, some of these associations I'm relatively unfamiliar with.
Right.
So I based my opinions on what I understood about those organizations, so.
Right, no, absolutely. One reason I'm mentioning it is that there's some money that's remaining to be allocated, and then maybe that's something you could decide how you feel about it. There's $2,500 left over here. If it was something that you wanted to make a suggestion specifically for. So first thing is this a good way of going about it or not?
I move that we accept the proposed allocation that Hillard has come up with, looking at all of the monies that we individually said we would want to give to the 12 organizations.
Is there a motion?
Yes.
We would need to decide
And
about the other
well,
money.
that'd be a second thing. That'd be a
That'd be a
second.
second motion. Okay, great, fine. Just to get discussion going, is there a second to that motion?
A second.
Okay, so now it's open for some discussion of whether it's a good way to go about it or not. So,
I may have missed this, Mr. Chairman. The 20% Board of Health proposed allocation, I assume that's because there's 5 members. Is that where that 20% came from?
no, it was my trying to come up with a number that would end up being close to 60,000. That's
Understood.
all. So I divided each by 5.
Okay.
That's all. Each, what was the proposed allocation divided by 5. I think that's how I came up with the numbers.
Okay.
Look at Independence House. It's 32,000. You divide it by 5, it's 6,000. And change. That's sort of how that. It's simple math is what I did. Or look at the age support group. The total group was 15,000 or and change, and 20% is $3,100, whatever. So it was fairly simple. That's how I came about with it.
Excuse me, what's the problem?
there may not be, or there may be, it's just a question of whether the board wants to do it this way. This is just how I came up with, something to get this off the ground. It doesn't mean we have to do anything like this at all.
Just discussing my motion to accept this or not. I mean, we haven't voted on it yet.
It
so
makes
just a
good
discussion.
sense to me, anyway. Makes,
Yeah,
seems
yeah.
fairly equitable.
yeah. I mean, after
I
trying
mean,
to
they,
figure it out last meeting and it's
Yeah.
kind of mind boggling. I think it was,
they each made a nice, presentation. I think at least
Mhm.
we acknowledge that each and every group would receive a equitable amount of money
well,
Okay.
according to
something,
what we have.
Right.
something. I mean,
Yep.
and equitable as defined by the members, because he took what each of us would have allocated and summed it and then took 20% of it. That's how he came up with his numbers, right?
Yep.
Yep. So, yeah, I think it's fine.
Take a vote.
Yes,
Okay, all in favor of the motion, raise your hand, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Okay, so that passes, and now there's the point of what to do with the remaining money to be allocated, which if you look at the first column there, under our allocations, there's 2,561 remaining dollars for us to decide, how to distribute that money.
What happens to that amount if it is not allocated to one of these organizations?
probably
Well,
lose it.
my feeling is you spend it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
you
goes
said
back-
Well, I agree. I'm just curious.
No, general funds, it's just,
General funds,
yeah.
probably.
Someone's house repair here on the board.
Yeah.
Anyone needs something for their house, that's all.
Go to the Cape Cod Hoarding Task Force.
No, it doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. I
No,
spoke
yeah,
out of turn.
Well, yeah, go, give it to the Cape Cod Hoarding Resource Network. They didn't ask for it, but they need it, right?
Interesting.
That was Barry's thought.
Larry, that came from you? Yeah,
They need something somewhere.
Give them a start,
is there any issue if someone hasn't sent in an application?
No, I mean, the board has discretion in that. The only piece with the task force, the resource network is to making sure that this is allocated just to Yarmouth.
Mhm.
Right, because
Yep.
they're across multiple communities. So it could be earmarked for Yarmouth, instance, things of
but-
that nature. There'll be a caveat to the funding.
Well, except that what they're trying to do is develop a program. So I mean, the program would have to be, it would be one that would apply to all of their constituents. So I wouldn't want to limit it. You see what I'm saying? They don't have a program yet.
Right.
This to me is kind of like money
To
to
kick-
help them.
It's a pilot program to kickstart. This is, first phase of dollars. Sure.
It would be applicable to Yarmouth because we have individuals who
Right, it
have
would be
this
applicable to-
problem, this disorder, I
applicable.
guess, is the only way to look at it
Right.
Okay.
at this point with how the organization is.
These organizations service people other than just Yarmouth. I mean, even the food pantry, it includes. But I understand what you're saying because we have in the past said we want to know how many Yarmouth residents have been
Right.
benefited by this program.
May I make a suggestion maybe?
Sure.
What about then the senior center for their program, the Berry Treasures program that they've been doing?
Well, I'd rather not do that until I heard from Linda Colby because, I mean, yeah, I'd rather not do that.
Okay. I just
Th-
thinking out loud.
Yeah. Because I don't know what the cost is. I mean, it's a social worker who leads it and certainly she has a salary. But I'd rather look at the bigger picture, I think.
Okay.
And we certainly can direct them a little bit. It's easiest if it comes from your department, from the
We could
health.
say in the future,
Yeah,
we
this
will want
is-
to know how many Yarmouth residents are served if indeed we continue to be able to give you some money. And that's not a given.
Erica, we work pretty closely with Barnstable. I could have her, not necessarily a formal application, but what do the startup dollars, these infusion of dollars to get this up and going, and how would it translate and what could you get done with that? What would you put those dollars towards? So I could request that, I should say, from the from the resource network, what that would look like.
Well, you mentioned there are some cases that will come in front of this board from individuals living in the town who are suffering from hoarding. And that is there,
We've already had them. We've had several already.
That's what he
and-
said.
and
There
we-
are some cases, yeah.
right. Now, are there funds? Is there money that could be spent to help those individuals, whether it's paying for clearing out property or whatever? That would be along your lines of something specific for this town. Are things not getting done in our town for these individuals because of money?
Yeah, we struggle with that. We don't have the funding for that.
Thought you
Remember, you
mentioned
came
that
right
to
here.
the board because you had rented some dumpsters, right? For one particular.
There were times when we have had to go to find dollars
Right,
inside
I
our,
remember this.
and we have a
Yes.
pretty austere budget, just so you know, there's not a lot of extra dollars within the health budget for that.
Right.
So this could say, I'd have to write something up for the board to review. If you want to pause, I could maybe, I could write something up on how we would handle again at $2,500, but it might be something. Sometimes it's just, it could be transportation for them to the dumpster sticker, something of that nature. It'd give you some infusion of dollars.
And there would not be, I mean, it'd be sitting with you, that money wouldn't have to be spent in that year.
No, it could, yeah, it would stay.
It's the same reason, but it could be January 2026 that it's used for.
But we would sign up, we would create a line item and then draw down, and we're already a vendor. I mean, we'd be part of the system, so we'd be able to allocate those dollars. It's creative thinking, yeah, no, that might work.
It's
Yes, it
different
would
than
work.
what you were saying, Mary. I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Because well, it's different, but it's okay. I mean, it's a start.
It may be helpful when the select board looks at what we're doing. Here's something very specific for our town, perhaps. It's very concrete examples of what the health department needs the money for.
Right.
Pretty simple to look at.
As long as it can be done. I mean, logistically, you can do it, right? You
Right.
can take
That,
money back from,
it has never been done,
right,
but we're putting it towards, this is a human service, and it just, the vendor is now going to be the health department.
Right.
Delivering the services.
that they,
Oh.
for which they have no money right now.
Right. You know, we raise awareness. We work with faith-based organizations. Elder Services really been our go-to on this. VNA has helped, fire department has helped, but really, I'm going to tell you, it hasn't delivered a lot of results. These are difficult, but this would give us a start. It would help in some way.
Mhm.
Okay.
We're not gonna bring on an individual with this dollars. Would be with this, but it might eliminate some
Potential
financial
expense.
barriers, right?
Yeah, so be it.
Yeah.
So let's,
I
Mary,
make them
you do a great job making these
I'm-
proposals, so.
yeah, and
you
this
make
is
that
the most,
proposal. I think it's a great idea.
this is the MVP of our series here, so, and continues to be so.
Charlie, would you make the motion? That we use this money, the 2,561 for reporting,
Take the $2,561
$61,
and do what?
give it to the health department
Oh, yeah.
to support hoarding expenses.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
I second.
Second motion, thank you. Hopefully there's no more discussion. That's great. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And motion passes unanimously. Great. Good effort, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to write something up so the board understands that you have, for the next meeting, that you'll have an understanding of what exactly, how we'll be using that and how that, where that will sit and how that'll be done. Okay?
Well, we'll see if you have new radial tires on your car. Okay. So let's move ahead then. Final draft, of the poultry regulations. Signatures are required. It's a big moment,
Yeah,
everyone.
here we go. So, last meeting we did you guys agreed on the changes. I have it right here. I will pass it down. You can read it. If you want the back pages, the signatures. When you're done with that, please hand it back so we can file it upstairs and make it official.
Did you eliminate the guinea hens?
Yeah.
The guinea hens.
We inserted
Makes
the
sense.
guinea hens your recommendation, and there were several edits that the chair found that were redundant on a few things. There was some wording, I think it might have been a punctuation, but there was a spelling and or a sentence that was redundant. The edits that were suggested removed, but yes,
Not substantive,
right.
not substantive.
Not substantive by any means.
They can ask for a variance for roosters and guinea hens, so. Here we go. And we got time for the game. Eric, when would be a good time for me to get you this? So for you to sign, you are not here, but you are present to sign it. How would you like me to coordinate with you on this?
Do you have my cell?
I can get it off record.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we could just coordinate a time maybe later this week, Thursday or Friday. I could stop by.
Probably Thursday be better for me.
Okay.
Or I can get one of the agents to meet you somewhere in the middle.
I can come to you. That's all right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we get your signature on it since you're here.
Okay, this sounds like it's done. There are a couple inserts here in the packet. One was the opioid-related overdose deaths, some statistics there that you placed in here.
Thought the board should see, I mean, numbers have moved down 10% in 23, moving in the right directions.
Right.
Certainly the opioid dollars with the YSAC group, Daniel Rodriguez, and Annie from the police department have come forward. There's a group that meets once a month that will come together. There are dollars that are being put towards nonprofits in the community, but you can see that the numbers have made a difference. And again, these are statewide numbers.
So what about Yarmouth? Can we hear from the police department about Yarmouth's
You can
deaths?
find out. Sure.
Thank
They
you.
report on a monthly basis. I can get those. But I included that in the pack because I think the board should know, right?
It's
Moving.
good
yeah.
news.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we saw something over the last number of years. I'm sure that's all computerized. They could
They
just
have a database. They've
print
got-
it all out, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
We have heard in the past occasionally from them when something
Okay.
has come up.
And also in the packet was statistics from the checking the waters at beaches.
The beaches,
Question about that, because it said, please be aware that posting is only required if one of the following criteria is met. There's
I
nothing,
didn't,
that didn't copy,
well,
just, if I could just hear about that. When do you post?
When we get, so they do the samples Monday mornings and we usually find out by Wednesday afternoon if there is any issues. Then as soon as if there's any issues with the testing, they go out and retest that beach immediately. And we usually hear by Thursday morning if there's any issues. And we have not had, glad to say, we have not had any closures in the town of Yarmouth yet.
What's the criteria for closing?
I'm not for sure on that. I think Phil might have.
I mean, one of them, there was posting and it was 164. And I can understand, I mean, that's a pretty high number compared to all of these others, but, you know, Indian Memorial was 34.5, Lyman Lane 39.9. It was just the one posting, and I guess it was cut off, but it says yes, parentheses, single, nothing else, but I assume that meant that there was a posting, a single posting. But yes, I'd like to know what causes you to actually post.
I'll get with the county and see what they actually,
Must be some levels
Yeah.
that they look at. Okay,
I'd be more than happy to do that for us.
thank you.
Thanks. Good pickup.
just on that, today was the first day of the beaches opening.
Mhm.
Okay, they're open permanently and I was over at Natural Resources, full staff of lifeguard. So you hear on the news, the communities are struggling. Well, Yarmouth actually does the training themselves. So these lifeguards don't have to pay for that. They're trained and we have a full complement of lifeguards so that the community understands that the beaches are now open and fully staffed.
Right.
And the board now
Good news.
understands that it started today. And the water park actually opened, I believe it was last Thursday. That's a big attraction in town. That's the big player in town. And the water,
Yarmouth.
and the water park is open. And the same, the attractions expand each time. Was what, the inflatable park, and now it's certainly much more than that. It's they moved the margins on that. It's exponentially improved just in the short couple of years that I've been here. So they're open and the beaches are open and we've got some warm weather coming. So
Pools, the swimming pools, has Phil gotten around to all of them now?
actually you had a report in the last,
Right. Oh,
they weren't, there may be a few left, but I sign them on a fairly regular basis. I would say by this, because it usually coincides with the schools being out. My guess is they're all open now.
Okay.
the tourists happy.
Well, you can use the traffic and you'll see that, and hey, we're a touristic community, right? And it's wonderful. It's wonderful for the business community. As long as everyone stays safe.
Okay, we're up to number 10 here. It's new and old business. Anyone?
I'm all set.
I mean, certainly we need to decide about our next meeting.
That first week will be difficult because it's 4th of July week. I thought possibly if the board might be willing to go to a once a month in July, that 17th looks like the date of the 3rd. We would have this room for the 17th of July. Am I saying, but it's the 15th? 15th, I apologize. Yeah,
No, it's all right.
that's
Yeah,
the third,
what
the third Monday. Yep.
That's what I had picked. Great.
Okay.
Okay. Is that okay with everyone? 15th, next meeting? Okay,
15th of July, Larry?
I won't be there
okay.
in Dublin.
What about Amsterdam and Budapest? What are you talking about?
I fly to Dublin, then Dublin to Budapest.
Okay, well, there's a couple hours in the airport or what?
I'll do my best. I can call in, I will.
Fine, good.
Eric, did that work for you?
Yes.
No, you'd love to go to Dublin, right? That works. Okay. You want to vote on that or what?
We're going to Dublin.
Okay, I mean, it's 7:00. I mean, want to work towards getting everyone out of here. I know that people have to get ready for this game because otherwise we're gonna have to, if Boston doesn't win one game, we're gonna be dealing with like a reactive depression here in town. Yeah, it's gonna be dangerous here if they don't win a game soon. So we're gonna move towards adjournment. Be my advice.
I move that we
I
adjourn.
take it you're a Knicks fan?
I second it.
Yes, it's true. You don't have to say that publicly. I'll need the tires.
Seriously, you're next year.
I grew up there, yeah. I mean, coached basketball for years in New York, okay? All the churches, I was the coach. Absolutely. So, yes, thank you, Larry.
That's where your roots are. I understand.
It's hard to give that up.
Of course.
And all my heroes are dying. If you look at the front page, I mean, all the players, it's sad. Okay, so all in favor of adjourning, raise your hand, say aye. Okay, meeting's over. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your efforts.
Eric, I'll leave the for you to sign at the front counter.
Sure. And Thursday, you said is best?
Yeah, any day you want to come in.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, that's exciting, huh?
This for sure.